Ever get that, like, that daydream?
Yeah.
Stumbling across a hidden city, something straight out of an adventure
Ooh,
book.
totally. Who hasn't imagined that?
Well, get this. Our sources this time. They're jam-packed with those kinds of places. Sunken cities, desert mysteries, even some ancient tech that seems almost impossible for the time.
It really makes you question what we think we know about the past, doesn't it? Like with Atlantis, still so captivating, but it's the actual underwater cities that really ground us in what was.
Exactly. Speaking of which, you found a great example for us to dive into, that underwater archaeology documentary.
Right.
The Baye segment, I have to admit, I was hooked.
It really flips the script on how we picture the Romans,
Totally.
This wasn't just some city. It was like, imagine Vegas, but Roman Empire style. A playground for the elite, everything about luxury.
Okay, now that's a comparison I can get behind. Forget sunken city. This is the place to be. But what actually survived underwater? To tell us, this was party central back then.
Picture this, the remains of Claudius's Nymphaeum, this huge complex, statues, terraces, the whole 9 yards. It's like an underwater museum now.
Wow.
And then there's the Villa Protiro, mosaic floors, practically untouched since the Romans were there. These weren't just houses, these were statements.
Definitely not your average Roman ruins. It really changes how you picture them, huh?
Okay, so from a city designed to indulge, let's switch gears completely. That same documentary also mentioned Pavlopetri in Greece. And honestly, the age of this place is mind-blowing. It's older than the pyramids, right?
Older by about 1,000 years, to be precise. It makes you rethink the timeline of, everything. The city, streets, buildings. It was thriving 500 years ago. 5,000. That's just... And divers can still make out the street plan on the seabed. It's like a time capsule. Okay, but then we get to the Yonaguni Monument. This is where things get really interesting. Off the coast of Japan, these massive stone structures, possibly man-made, possibly 10,000 years old.
It's almost like our brains want to believe, Could it be from some civilization we haven't even discovered yet? One that predates everything we thought we knew?
Right. It's like something out of Indiana Jones.
It's possible, absolutely. But nature is capable of some pretty unbelievable stuff, too. We have to remember that.
True, but still. I mean, we're talking about something the size of 5 football fields. And those carvings. It's hard not to let your imagination run wild.
Exactly. That's half the fun, right? Trying to piece together the past when the clues are so open to interpretation.
Absolutely. Okay, so from a potential ancient mystery to a city that met a very definitive end. Port Royal in Jamaica. Not a gradual decline, not slowly sinking. This was bam, earthquake in 1692. Entire city underwater.
And the story it tells is wild. Think about it. In its prime, pirate haven, overflowing with riches, a symbol of power. Now, it's this eerie reminder that even the biggest, strongest civilizations, nature can wipe them out just like that.
It really makes you think, one day you're on top of the world, the next you're literally beneath the waves.
Talk about a change of scenery. From cities under the waves, we're jumping to the Sahara Desert. You wouldn't think a place famous for being, empty would be an archaeologist's dream, would you?
I'll be honest, when I hear desert, I picture, endless sand dunes. Maybe a camel wandering by. Definitely not the first place that pops into my head for historical discoveries. What's the story there? Were deserts the place to be back in the day?
You'd be surprised. We tend to see them as, unchanging, static. But deserts actually hold the keys to a time when things were totally different.
Yeah.
When the climate was milder and nomadic cultures were thriving. What we see as empty now was anything but.
Okay, so it's like a cover-up. But what kind of clues are we talking about? What did those nomadic people leave behind?
Well, check this out. In Saudi Arabia, there are these massive stone structures. They call them desert kites. Remember those from the documentary?
Oh, yeah. They looked like huge arrows all pointing in different directions. They weren't actually for navigation, though, were they?
Nope. Imagine you're a herder thousands of years ago. You need to guide your animals, right? To a watering hole, maybe. These kites, some of them kilometers long, acted like giant funnels, leading the animals where they needed to go.
Wow, I never would have guessed. And the planning that must have taken, did they have ancient blueprints or something?
All right. It shows a deep understanding of the land, animal behavior, even engineering. And it's not just about building it. They had to picture how it would work within the landscape, how the animals would move through it.
That's incredible. Okay, now I got to ask about those mustidals. That one article you sent mentioned them, and honestly, I'd never even heard of them.
Oh, yeah. The mustidals are truly a mystery. Picture this. You're in the middle of the desert, and suddenly there's this massive rectangular structure. made entirely of stone, some of them over 1 kilometer long, older than the pyramid.
Older than the pyramids, and we have no clue what they were for.
Not a clue. Ceremonial, maybe for livestock, maybe something else entirely. It's a head-scratcher for sure.
Every time we uncover something new, it seems like we just have more questions. It's like a never-ending puzzle. Speaking of puzzles, what about those strange, perfectly round holes in the desert? The ones in that photo. Very X-Files, if you ask me.
Haha, I wish I had a more exciting answer, but they actually turned out to be from oil exploration. More recent than you might think.
Okay, well that makes a lot more sense, even if it's a little less mysterious. But while we're on the topic of deserts, how on earth did ancient civilizations survive in those conditions? It's not like there's a convenience store on every corner.
No kidding. Water management was key. And the ways they did it are pretty ingenious. We're talking deep wells, some still in use today, that tap into underground water sources, and these incredible systems of channels and cisterns to collect and distribute water, even in the harshest, driest places.
It really makes you appreciate turning on the tap and having water just come out. Okay, but finding water is one thing. What about staying cool?
Ah, that's where the yachtshell comes in.
The yachtshell. Sounds like a mythical beast.
Well, in a way it is, but a technological one. These were basically ancient Persian refrigerators. They made ice in the desert.
Hold on. Ice in the desert. You're messing with me.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
Okay, so picture a dome-shaped structure, underground. With super thick walls for insulation, they'd channel water into the structure, and through a combo of evaporation and this clever ventilation system, boom, ice in the middle of the desert.
Ice in the desert. That's just genius. It's like they were masters of their environment, you know. What other tricks did they have up their sleeves?
Well, I'm sure you've heard of wind catchers.
Oh, yeah. Wind catchers. Those things are amazing, like literally cool. I remember seeing them in a documentary about ancient Persian architecture, I think. They're like nature's air conditioning, right?
Exactly. They built these towers to catch the wind, and then that cool air would flow right into the buildings. So simple, but it worked.
And it's not just in Persia, is it? I feel like I've heard of them being used all over.
Oh, absolutely. Wind catchers, they're everywhere. Egypt, Yemen, all over the place. They've been keeping people cool for centuries. And the cool thing is, those ancient ideas, they're coming back.
Yeah.
In modern architecture.
Yeah. I was reading about that. It's like they say, everything old is new again.
Right. Like, think about those double-layered walls you see in traditional desert buildings. Now they're using that same idea for insulation. Keeps the heat out, keeps the cool in. No need for fancy air conditioning all the time.
It's amazing how resourceful they were back then. They didn't just survive, they thrived.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if we could learn a thing or two from them. Speaking of learning from the past, that last article you sent about Cleopatra's lost tomb. That's some seriously cool stuff. Is there anything more exciting than looking for the final resting place of a ruler like that?
People have always been drawn to figures like Cleopatra, haven't they? She's like history and legend all rolled into one. And her tomb, they think it's hidden somewhere under the sands at a place called Taposiris Magna. Archaeologists have been looking for it, like, forever.
It just makes your imagination run wild. The treasures, the artifacts, all the secrets, just waiting to be found. But didn't that article mention something about the search being, well, really difficult? It's not like she left a map lying around or something.
Not quite. It's centuries of earthquakes, shifting sands, plus the sheer size of the area they're searching. It's a massive undertaking. But can you imagine if they found it intact? It'd be like a window into her world.
Talk about a blast from the past. You know, it's funny, everything we've been talking about, these ancient cities, these incredible designs, even a lost tomb, it all points to this really human need to connect with the past, don't you think? To learn from it and maybe even find inspiration for the future. Which, speaking of, brings us to something else you dug up for us, AI and architecture.
Now, that's a fascinating combination.
Right. What's so cool about it is it's not about AI taking over and designing everything. It's about AI as a partner. Imagine giving it all the data we have, ancient techniques, modern materials, and then letting it help us design the best, most efficient buildings possible.
And not just efficient, sustainable too. We could create buildings that actually work with nature, not against it.
Exactly. Just like those wind catchers and yacht shells, but on a whole other level.
Imagine cities that are designed to breathe, to adapt, to exist in balance with the environment. It's like taking the best of what we've learned over thousands of years and combining it with cutting-edge technology.
It really makes you wonder what people will think hundreds of years from now when they look back at our buildings. Will they be as impressed as we are when we uncover something from the past? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? The future of our cities built on foundation of human ingenuity. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for exploring with us, and until next time, keep those imaginations running wild.